Good afternoon. The Senate will come to order. The senators will please take their seats. Those persons not entitled to the privilege of the floor will retire to the gallery. The senators and all in attendance, please stand and be led in prayer by the Reverend Thomas P. Ferguson of the Good Shepherd Catholic Church in Alexandria. Following the prayer, everyone will please remain standing and be led in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America by our Senate page, Sonvi Chaula of Enrico.
Thank you, Madam President. Brothers and sisters, let us remember that we are in the holy presence of God. O God, you are the author of the gifts of life and liberty which we cherish so dearly in this Commonwealth. We ask your blessing on the members of this Senate who gather here today to do your work and the work of your people, enacting laws that promote the common good and protect the rights and dignity of all, especially those who are the weakest and those whose lives are the most vulnerable. We ask you to bless, too, the citizens of this Commonwealth. Together with our leaders, may we work together to make Virginia a place where all will experience the blessings of truth and life, holiness and grace, justice, love, and peace. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will call the roll. All those present, please vote aye. The clerk will close the roll.
You have a quorum, Madam President. Senate Journal for Tuesday, February 8, 2022.
The senator from Northern Fairfax County, Senator Howell, moves that the reading of the journal be waived. All in favor of waiving the reading of the journal will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 32, noes 5.
Ayes 32, noes 5. The reading of the journal is waived. The clerk will report any communications from the House of Delegates. Senior Senator from Fairfax County, Senator Saslaw.
Good morning, Madam President.
Good morning.
Madam President, I move that the Senate bills... I'm ahead of myself. I move that we waive the reading of the communications from the House of Delegates.
The question is, shall the reading of the communication be waived? All in favor of waiving the reading of the communication from the House of Delegates will please record their votes. Aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 32, noes 5.
Ayes 32, noes 5. The reading of the communication is waived. The clerk will now report any communication from the governor.
We do not have any, Madam President.
Now comes the time in the morning hour when we are able to talk with our wonderful guests. We're so glad that you're here, and what will happen is your name will be called, and you will please rise at that time, and we will hear all about your wonderfulness, and then we will applaud afterwards. And so, with that, I do call on the senator from Eastern Fairfax County, Senator Somerville.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise for an introduction and a request.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, joining us today for our morning blessing was the pastor, Thomas Ferguson. Father Ferguson is a local boy like me. He grew up in the Fort Hunt part of Fairfax County. He went to Bishop Ireton High School, the alma mater of Governor McDonnell, Tom Farrell, some other prominent Virginians. He went on to get 5 degrees, including a master's from Mount St. Mary's, a PhD from the University of Virginia, and now he serves as the pastor at Good Shepherd Catholic Church in Mount Vernon, Virginia. Post office likes to call it Alexandria, but we like to call it Mount Vernon, where he preaches to the faithful flock. Senator Joe Gartland's old former church. Some of you may remember him, who served with him years ago, but I finally got Pastor Ferguson here. It took us, I think, 3 chances. He got snowed out last year to a snowstorm, but I was so happy he was able to come down and give us our very efficient blessing. And Madam President, in light of all the wonderfulness up there in the gallery, I would hope you would convey his wonderfulness to him. So thank you, and I hope you give him a warm welcome in the Senate.
Reverend Ferguson, will you please stand? Thank you for your prayer. Thank you for your caring for your faithful flock. And thank you for being on the front lines and helping us to have good faith and good commonwealth. So with that, senators, please join me in welcoming to his Senate, Reverend Ferguson. Chair recognizes.
I had the request.
The gentleman may say.
I would ask that the journal be marked to reflect the absence of the senator from Prince William County, who's away on pressing personal business.
The journal will so reflect. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Madam President, rise for the purposes of 2 reasons.
Senator has the floor.
Madam President, could the journal reflect that the senator from Rockingham is away from the Capitol and pressing personal business?
The journal will so state.
Madam President, I have a second introduction in the gallery.
Gentleman may continue.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, with us today we have the Amato family. They are Mom Katie, there's Annabelle, who's in 2nd grade, and Lillian, who's in 3rd grade. They came by my office earlier today and expressed some of their views about things going on at the Capitol, and we're very excited to be able to be in the gallery. They had a request of me. It was not one that I could actually fulfill, so I hope that this time has been exciting for them and they can take it back to school as they go forward the remainder of the week. If you could offer them the warm welcome of the Senate.
Good afternoon. Will you please rise? Thank you for coming, and I noticed so very many young ones in our gallery today, and we're looking at our future leaders. And as I've said in the past, I don't know what I was doing at your age, but this wasn't it. So thank you for coming and observing your government in action. Thank you. And senators, let us give them the warm applause of the Senate. The gentleman from King George, Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Madam President. Rise for an introduction.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to bring to the attention of the body of the presence in the gallery of Sean Myers and Peyton Haywood. And Madam President, I had the opportunity to visit with both of them this morning, had great discussions about politics with Peyton, who is a young man and finding his interest in that and helping candidates and working hard, and also with Sean Myers. And I will tell you, we owe him a special welcome. He's a special agent with the State Police Violent Crimes Unit, and he does a great service for us and this Commonwealth, and I was honored to get to meet with both of them this morning, Madam President, and so I would ask that you give them the warm welcome of the Senate.
Will you please rise? Good afternoon to you, and thank you for coming, and we thank you for what you do in our great Commonwealth. Thank you, young man. And senators, please give them the warm welcome of their Senate. The gentleman from Spotsylvania, Senator Reeves.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise for two introductions.
The senator has the floor.
Madam President, I'm going to start with somebody who is no stranger to the Capitol. He's down here quite often. Every year we're in session, but more importantly, he's probably in Ryan McDougal or Senator McDougal's truck more than anything, because Senator McDougal represents his district. But he's a dear friend to many of us. He and I actually started in politics way back when I became a precinct captain and chairman. And it's the Honorable Jeff Seeley, who is the chairman of the board for Caroline County Board of Supervisors. If we could give him the warm welcome of the Senate, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you, Madam President.
Mr. Seeley, please rise. Good morning to you. Thank you for coming, and thank you for what you're doing on behalf of the citizens of Virginia as an elected official. And senators, let us give him the warm welcome of the Senate. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam President. As I continue today, today's kind of a special day for a lot of folks, because today was Defending Life Day here at the Capitol. And Madam President, I got to speak to quite a few groups, but none more important than the group that came to see me that's from my district, standing for innocent life and letting us know their views on that particular topic. And, we're chartered with the charge to take care of the least, the last, and the lost among us. And there's probably no greater cause than that of innocent life. And Madam President, if you will have the folks from the Fredericksburg area, they're in red for down here, give them the welcome for the Defending Life today.
Will you please rise? Thank you for coming, as I like to look at all of you and realize that this is what we all look like. This is what America looks like. Thank you for caring, and thank you, as the gentleman stated, the least, the last, and the lost. Never heard it said as succinctly and appropriately as that. Thank you for all that you do. Senators, please let us give them the warm welcome of the Senate. Is there any other business to come for the morning hour? Hearing none, the clerk will call the calendar.
Senate calendar for Tuesday, February 9, 2022. Uncontested calendar, Senate bills on third reading.
The chair recognizes the gentleman, the senior senator from Fairfax County, Senator Saslaw.
Madam President, I move that the Senate bills on third reading, uncontested calendar, pages 1 through 3, that's Senate Bill 694 through 753, be placed on their final passage in a block. Any senator desiring to remove a bill from the block, please do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill.
We have 7 bills before us. The question is, shall the Senate bills on the uncontested calendar, third reading, pages 1 through 3, Senate Bill 694 through 753, be placed upon their final passage in the block, with the understanding that any senator desiring to remove a bill from the block may do so after the clerk has read the number of the bills. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The bills are before us in the block. The clerk will now read the number of the bills.
Senate Bill 694, Senate Bill 622, Senate Bill 705, Senate Bill 725, Senate Bill 733, Senate Bill 749, Senate Bill 753.
The question is, shall the bills in the block pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 37, no 0, Rule 36-1.
Ayes 37, no 0, R36, 1.
Madam President,
The gentleman from Hanover.
having voted on the prevailing side by which the block passed, I move that we reconsider the block.
The question is, shall the vote by which all the bills in the block pass be reconsidered? All those in favor of the passage will say, of the reconsideration, will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 37, no 0.
Ayes 37, no 0. The bill is now reconsidered. Again, the question is, shall all the bills in the block pass? Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, no 0.
Ayes 38, no 0. The bills in the block pass.
Regular calendar, Senate bills on third reading. Senate Bill 104, mandatory minimum sentences, elimination, modification of sentence to mandatory minimum term.
The junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Madam President, and good morning to you.
Good morning.
Madam President, I'd ask that Senate Bill 104 be passed by for the day, and this may be, and I would advise the body, the first of several days that it's passed by for the day to see if we can arrive at any consensus. Thank you, Madam President.
Without objection, Senate Bill 104 goes by for the day.
Senate Bill 375, optometrists allowed to perform laser surgery if certified by Board of Optometry.
The gentleman from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the bill pass. Speak to the motion.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate. This is the optometry bill. This basically redefines the practice of optometry and basically moves it into a separate code section, specifies what optometrists can or cannot do, and the real substance of the bill is it allows them to do 3 non-invasive surgical procedures, and I'm going to give my best shot at the pronunciations: the iridotomy, I'm going to call the SLT, and then the YAG capsulotomy. We had a lot of testimony in subcommittee that these are 3 procedures that are used illegal in 8 other states, and there have been no showing of negative effects, and basically no showing of complaints, really. And so based upon that, the subcommittee had some comfort moving forward. We did put in, as you can see on the calendar, a lot of language in the enactment clauses. We wanted to set up a certification process which will be similar to the oral surgery certification that we have for dentists, as well as a supervision and a self-reporting regime. And I think we got there. There's a lot of there's really a lot of protections built around this. I think at the end of the day, it's a good bill. I know not everyone's going to be enamored with it, but I really think it's a necessary change, and I ask we pass the bill.
The question is, Shall Senate Bill 375 pass? All those in favor of passage will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 33, noes 3, Rule 36-1.
Ayes 33, noes 3, Rule 36-1.
Senate Bill 393, Consumer Data Protection Act data deletion request.
The gentleman from Alexandria, Senator Eben.
Could that bill go by for the day?
Without objection. Senate Bill 393 goes by for the day.
Senate Bill 656, Sexually Explicit Content, DOE shall develop model policies, parental notification.
The gentlelady from Enrico, Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam President, Senate Bill 656 is a bill that we've discussed and passed out of this body before that seeks to inform parents when controversial, sexually explicit material is being discussed in the classroom. It has nothing to do with libraries. It has an enactment clause that specifically protects books and ensures that it does not censure any books. But, Madam Chairman, as the mother of 4, I can tell you that my children's education was an opportunity to discuss with them things that were difficult, things that people had different opinions on, and to explore those conversations with my children. Parents and teachers are united in the effort to educate, inform, and prepare their children. And therefore, they need to have equal awareness of what's being discussed. So, Madam Chairman, that's all this bill does. We heard from advocates for different school lobbying groups that this was already being done, but on query in subcommittee, they admitted it was not being done consistently. In some places we're doing it, and some weren't. And so, Madam Chairman, there is no intent here for Madam President. Please, I apologize, Madam President. I'm going to get it right. But Madam President, this bill is something we can all embrace because it's about actually making sure tough conversations happen and that parents interact with their children on those things. And I hope the body will see fit to pass it on to the House. Thank you.
The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to speak in opposition to the bill.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, let me just say that school boards already engage their parents in conversations on the curriculum. And every school board that I'm aware of, I represent 3 jurisdictions, but have been involved in school issues for a long time. Parents always get copies of the reading lists that their children are expected to go through. And there is a regulation on the books that requires school boards to adopt specific policies regarding the instructional materials that are to be used in the classroom. I do not believe that further articulation in code is helpful or necessary. I think it could place our professional teachers in a position where they believe they could be second-guessed at any moment. Perhaps the better approach would be to direct the Department of Education to develop perhaps policies that school boards can adopt. I do not think this legislation is helpful or needed, and for those reasons, I would ask that the body vote against this legislation. Thank you, Madam President.
The chair recognizes the junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, would the gentlelady from Henrico yield for a question?
Will the senator from Henrico yield?
Yes, Madam President, I yield.
Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Madam President. I would tell the body that I spoke briefly with the gentle lady before this debate, and I told her that I'd like to hear more of the details. I would ask the gentle lady if she could explain in greater depth that language which would require the local school board to either comply with a policy or adopt a policy wherein the public elementary or secondary school would notify the parent about possible language coming up. How specifically would that elementary or secondary school notify the parent?
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Madam President. And so I will point out, first of all, that the bill, as it is before you today, directs, as was mentioned from the gentle senator from I'm not sure where, Arlington, that directs the Department of Education to develop exactly as she requested model policy that can be adopted by the local school boards. And it is exactly like other legislation we've passed through this body following that constitutional respect. But this would be a policy that was developed probably on similar policies that school boards have in their individual regions but are not universally kind of standardized across the state. To try and answer the junior senator from Richmond's question, but essentially the Department of Education would make those decisions. The educators would decide how to do this. But I suspect that in course curriculum and in correspondence with the parents, it happens at the beginning of the school year or as a child signs up for a class, that there would be some mention of this does contain sexually explicit material as defined, and then the parents can look at that more closely. I hope that answers the question, Madam President.
Senator Morrissey.
Madam President, would the gentle lady yield for a final question?
Will the senator yield?
I will, Madam President.
Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Madam President. It appears to me that there may be two levels of notification. The gentle lady from Arlington referenced a policy that already exists among the school board that notifies parents, and this specific legislation talks about the public elementary or secondary school notifying the parent. I'm just trying to, and I do not want to be argumentative, but I'm trying to determine what this second level of notification actually entails, and is it not superfluous to what the gentle lady from Arlington mentioned in her brief remarks?
Senator from Hanover.
Thank you, Madam President. And the answer is that the policy to which the gentle lady from Arlington referenced is not at all relevant to this bill. Number one, she was referencing summer reading lists, which give a list of books when she says we let them know the books that the students are reading, and it talked about school board engagement in curriculum. This would be individual courses that might have chosen a book that has a particularly sensitive subject so that the parents are aware what their children are reading and have the opportunity to have a conversation with that. I guarantee you, in almost all cases, the outcome of this is a conversation between a parent and a child about a difficult subject. Had many of them, and it's constructive, and it's broadening for the parent, and it's broadening for the child, and it's healthy. And we're trying to have that kind of healthy transparency and exchange of ideas, both in the classroom and at home, so that there's an opportunity to converse about those things. And that's why this is different. It's much more specific.
I thank the gentle lady, Madam President.
The senior senator from Chesterfield, Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to speak in opposition to this bill.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I know we've had these debates before around similar legislation that has focused on issues of concern for parents. I certainly wholeheartedly agree with the senator from Henrico that parents ought to be involved in these direct and important conversations with their parents. And I would argue that many families already engage in such conversations. And in fact, that those are probably a staple in numerous households. What I don't agree with is that we ought to legislate those conversations because these are family matters. Now, when we think about this bill, I know the senator from Henrico has argued that this is not a censorship bill, but in fact, this is what it comes from and this is what it leads to. It is this understanding that somehow there are materials that are should be not made available in school classrooms. I would argue that we need to place trust in our educators. They understand what is age-appropriate material. I would also argue that parents have every opportunity and every right to determine if some material is not appropriate for their children. But, Madam President, this bill really targets a particular segment of our academic discipline. It targets literature, because what are we talking about if not literature when we're thinking about sexually explicit content? And we are talking about material that some parents may find objectionable, that is considered classic literature. I would argue that The Wife of Bath from Chaucer's Canterbury Tales would be considered bawdy literature, would be considered sexually explicit literature. Ought it to be banned from our high school classrooms? I would argue no, that there is a place, a purpose, a content in which we ought to explore such writing. Similarly, many plays of Shakespeare would fit into this category. When we're talking about sexually explicit content that comes under banning, however, it's not Chaucer, it's not Shakespeare. Invariably, it is the writing of Black and brown authors. We've seen this debate take place publicly in the writings, particularly recently, of Toni Morrison, most explicitly around the novel Beloved. And these are the potential harm that's contained in this legislation, that we expose opportunities for our children to be shielded from important conversations, important works of literature that they really need to engage in. And these are works of literature that are most explicitly studied in courses that are AP or dual enrollment. There are college-level courses. Madam President, I argue that we not vote this bill forward. Thank you.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Madam President. Speak in support of Senate Bill 656.
The gentleman may continue.
Thank you. Madam President, members of the Senate, it seems like we're having kind of two conversations. And the conversation is that which one wants it to be when it is in fact not. This is not a matter of censorship. This is a matter of notification. Notification between that entity that educates our children in the public system and the parents whose number one role, the primacy, is to be a parent and make those determinations for their children before they become adults of what they learn about, what they're exposed to, and that they're able to make these decisions because the school or the teacher informs them when these things may occur. It is not banning books. It is not censorship. These conversations involve when there is one of those works where it may be present some certain definition, and we'll talk about that in a second, that the parents are given information so that they can make their own determinations for their children, like is their God-given right. I am reminded of the late Senator Ben Chafin, who said about his children in the last speech he gave to the Senate, "My children are my jewels, my greatest possession, and I will stand here to defend that right to determine what they hear, listen to, or exposed to, because that's my obligation," he said, as their father, God rest his soul. If you look at the bill itself, it says parental notification of sexually explicit content. And sexually explicit content is defined in the Code of Virginia. Under Section A of this bill, it says, as used in the section, sexually explicit content has the same meaning as provided for in subsection A of 2.2/2827 of the Virginia Code. And when you go to those definitions in section 2.2/2827, it is very specific of what material a parent should be notified about before it is given to their children for educational purposes. Allow me to read it for you. Sexually explicit content means 1, any description of, or 2, any picture, photograph, drawing, motion picture, film, digital image, or similar visual representation depicting sexual bestiality. A lewd exhibition of nudity, as nudity is defined in 18.2390, the Criminal Code. Sexual excitement, sexual conduct, or sadomasochistic abuse, also defined in section 18.2390, coroprophilia, urophilia, or fetishism. That's where the notifications come. That's where the notifications must be made. And there is not one thing here that I want someone else making a determination of whether my children, my jewels, sees it before I know about it. And it's funny, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate and Madam President, because this code section right here that defines sexually explicit content under code section 2.2/2827 is titled Restrictions on State Employee Access to Information Infrastructure. State employees can't possess this type of material using their computers or any implements of their job. But we think it's okay, if we vote against this bill, we think it's okay for a state employee, a teacher, to provide that to our children when we already have defined in the code that we do not let them possess that on the job or using the implements that they have, like computers or phones, to do their job. Let's not overarchingly make this bill into something it's not. But nevertheless, it is just as important. It is important because it's the right of parents to make those determinations. And when you read this definition, I don't think there's a parent in here that wants someone other than them discussing these issues with their children under the age of 18. Thank you, Madam President.
The junior senator from Chesterfield, Senator Chase.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to speak to the bill.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to associate my comments today with the senator from Franklin County who took a lot of what I was going to say, so I'll just finish with this. Kids belong to the parents. They don't belong to the government. And we as parents reserve the right to be notified whenever our children are going to be exposed to something we may or may not approve of. And therefore, I support this bill. And if anything, this last election proved that parents want a say in their child's education. And we as the General Assembly and the Senate need to respect the wishes of parents instead of pushing what the government thinks is best for our kids. Thank you, Madam President.
The gentleman from King George, Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Madam President. Speaking in support of the bill.
The gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd not intended to speak to this bill, but I was struck by some of the comments on the floor, and particularly by the gentlelady, the senior senator from Chesterfield. And if I understood what she said correctly, she said that there was certain content that children needed to be exposed to, and essentially we shouldn't pass a bill like this that notified parents of that content because they may object to it. And Madam President, I submit that's the whole point of this bill, because the people in this body don't get to substitute their judgment for that of the parents. It is my decision, if I have a minor child, as to whether or not that child gets to see, read certain things. And if I think it is not in their best interest, then perhaps I don't want them to see it. Or perhaps I think I need to have discussions with them to fill in the gaps that maybe they didn't get from another source. But as I recall, Parents in Virginia have a constitutional right to make decisions about their children. And I don't get to decide, nor does the senior senator from Chesterfield get to decide what content another person's child should be exposed to. That decision remains with that parent. And that's all this bill does. It notifies parents so they know what their children's seeing, and we should all support this bill.
The junior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator Kiggins.
Madam President, I rise to speak to the bill.
The senator has the floor.
Madam President, I just would like to rise to speak in support of Senate Bill 656. If there's one thing that I think I learned, and I know several of us have reiterated it, it's that parents really want a voice in their children's education, that parents matter. So much so that I still have my yard sign from this past November that we put up, that I think many other parents in the Commonwealth also had. But just that sentiment alone, we need that voice. We want that voice. This isn't just about books, but as a parent of school-age children, I get permission slips frequently if there's anything that's a movie that they might be seeing in school. Heck, I get a permission slip even when they're going to talk, scientifically about reproductive systems. So we have to sign a permission slip for that they're having that discussion in a classroom setting. But this should be my decision when that we're going to explore the controversial issues that I know there's been some concern expressed about. When the kids are in college and they're 18 and older, you're an adult then. It's up to you which classes you want to take, which books you want to read, what you want to study. That's kind of the age that we have defined by law. But before that, in K through 12, I'm the one that decides what my kids are doing, what they're going to learn, what they're going to listen to. It's so hard these days, I think we all agree, to be a parent. And I know that my kids, my 4 children, they're exposed to so much on their phones, on their social media, in TV, in movies. It's so hard even when we try to control what type of apps and things they're seeing on that phone. They're on those phones all day long. So it's already hard enough for us. When these kids see something in school, it kind of validates it for them in their world that this is okay. So if they see it in school, then that somehow makes it okay. And I need every way to be armed to protect them from the things I can protect them for, because parenting is hard. So I just say, let's not make it harder. And please pass Senate Bill 656.
The chair now recognizes the senator from Fauquier, Senator Vogel.
Madam President, speaking to the motion.
The senator has the floor.
I just wanted to make one observation for my colleagues in this room who are all very practical people and who have, in the arc of their time, I know, come in contact with young children and had reasons to be involved or concerned about their education. And I just want to make a very, very real distinction between this bill and other bills that have offended lots of people that somehow involve what people would consider censorship, book banning, and the kinds of things that I don't agree with. I don't agree with censorship at all. And I certainly don't agree that we should ban books, and I never have. And I wouldn't vote for legislation that did that. But what I will say is that it wasn't that many years ago that a very wise person stood up on the Senate floor and said, you know what, you're ignorant if you deprive people of information. And that has stuck with me because oftentimes when I think about a vote, I think about what she said to me that time. And it's true. This is just simply information. And if there is any message that's been delivered really strongly to me, and certainly I appreciate it as a parent, that is, parents just want information. They just want to know, and they deserve to know. You deserve to know as somebody who's involved in the life of your children, and our parents are just merely asking us, whether it's this bill, whether it's masks, whether it's being involved in decisions in the classroom regarding curriculum, they just want information. And they want to have some ability to understand and to know what is happening in the lives of their children, the thing that is most precious to them. And so I would just encourage the body to consider that this is not radical. This is not censorship. It's just information. And I hope that the members of the body will consider that and know that that means a lot to a lot of parents. Thank you.
The question is, shall Senate Bill...
Madam President, the patron over here, Senator Donovan.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Madam President. If I may make a few closing comments.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you. It would be easy to vote against this bill, as it has been described, but this bill is not at all what we have heard from some of the speeches today. First of all, I want to recall the time that my children were learning about World War II. And we went, and I took my 4 children, and we watched Schindler's List together. That's a really delicate movie. It's a delicate subject. I am so grateful for the opportunity to have had that time to explain that situation to my children and that atrocity and what human nature is capable of. And it was important and it was valuable. And there are many other conversations that I've had with my children. And that is what this bill seeks to do for all parents. If this is already being done, what's the harm in having a statewide model policy? There's no harm there. It just makes it consistent. When you talk about teachers are experts in age-appropriate material, what I think that says is that if there's any disagreement, they get the final word because they're the experts. I think that's the fundamental heart of what we're talking about. Transparency, is helpful. Our teachers are wonderful. Our teachers aren't trying to trick parents into their kids reading something they shouldn't, but making sure those parents are aware of these delicate issues should be a welcome opportunity for teachers. And so today I want to read and make sure you understand this is not about literature. This is about parental notification. In fact, line 29 says the provisions of this act shall not be construed as requiring or providing for censoring of books. So this is a very fundamental choice. Parents are the ones who have the final decision. I know that's uncomfortable, but if there's a debate, they are. And parents are worthy educators of their children that should be included in the issues that need deeper discussion. I hope you'll support the bill.
The question is, shall Senate Bill 656 pass? All those in favor of passage will now record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 20, noes 18.
Ayes 20, noes 18. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 739, Public Elementary and Secondary Schools, etc., Student Instruction.
The senator from Enrico, Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Madam President. This bill is a bill that installs in code the language to define in-person education and full-time education. And, last year, this body supported Senate Bill 1303, which was the first introduction of that language. And it was a real asset to Virginia. And we had many instances where there were those that remarked, Virginia's schools are staying open when other states are closing. Do you think that's 1303? And the answer is yes, it is. And we valued in-person education as essential for our children. We know all the damage that was done when we did not have it. And so that is the initial part of the bill. It has been amended, as you know, yesterday to codify, and I think we'll have some other speakers speak to the value of how you actually set about writing law as as opposed to alternative means, but it codifies again the parental choice on masking. And We can, I would love to talk about masking just for a couple of minutes. I won't impose on you for very long. I want to start by saying I hope you all saw the statement from the Supreme Court on Monday that made it clear and evident that 1303 was not a mask mandate. So any school board that says they cannot consider the will of the parents or have a conversation with their community about how to make this decision going forward based on 1303, the Supreme Court has clarified that issue. And as I and the senator from Fairfax City have said all along, never did it include a mandate. The next thing is, I know this issue of masks is touchy. It's like these boxes. People desperately want to do anything they can to protect. But the scientific theory is based on the premise that you take what you think is going to work and you test it. And you don't trust your gut, you trust the evidence. And Madam President, we've seen over the last few weeks many subject matter experts come forward that have reviewed the science on masking in schools. And there's not evidence that shows children in schools with masking have less spread of COVID-19 than children in schools that do not. So that's an uncomfortable bit of science, but it's accurate. However, we do know that masks have challenges and detriments for children, especially our young children, especially our children with special needs, especially in language formation, anxiety, mental health, all sorts of other issues. And so we are now perpetuating a mitigation strategy that does not have evidence that it actually works, but it does have evidence that it can do harm. This is antithetical to what we should be doing. In my world, you do no harm first. That is why we can debate all we want about masks, but that is why there is room for a conversation of children not masking in school. And I think we're back now to the premise we were discussing on the earlier bill, and that is that parents need to look compositely at their child. A child is not a singular thing. They are complicated human beings. And there are many variables that affect the overall health of that child, and parents need to have the final say in how that's managed, and that includes masks. And so that we have code speaking to that, we can clarify the terrible confusion that was caused by the misrepresentation of 1303 last year that begot a lot of these conflicts. We're going to clear that up, and that's what this bill is going to do. And so I'm happy to answer questions, but I move that the body pass the bill. Thank you, Madam President.
The gentleman from Alexandria, Senator Eben.
Thank you, Madam President. Speaking to the bill.
The senator has the floor.
I want to be clear. We are all tired of the impact of COVID in our communities and want nothing more than a return to normalcy. Recent indications are that the numbers of new COVID infections are declining, and we can finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. We've seen some governors across the country that have been changing mask mandates to take effect in March when the weather improves, and those lifting of mandates are often tied to conditions such as vaccine rates and community transmission rates. Local school boards are working with health authorities on off-ramps to begin removing layers of mitigation like masks. These off-ramps need to be based on clear scientific metrics and data and consistently implemented. We need to follow science, and this bill needs to reflect scientific guidance and, at a minimum, define the off-ramps that make sense. Additionally, the amendment adopted yesterday, unfortunately, goes beyond addressing the current health situation and restricts school boards from making decisions based on any emergency in the future. At a minimum, it should be tied to COVID, this bill. But this bill applies forever, regardless of whatever contagion, outbreak, or disease occurs. I never would have thought of COVID. If you asked me 5 years ago, would everyone need to wear masks to keep schools open, I would have been baffled. But you know what? It allowed schools to be open more safely, and I think it's time that we provide an off-ramp. But this bill doesn't provide an off-ramp that's guided by science. It just provides a full stop lift of the mandate, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of the community transmission rates, regardless of that school district. So with that, I ask that we defeat the bill.
The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Madam President. Speaking to the bill.
Senator may continue.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm not speaking right now as a senator. I'm speaking as a parent. I'm speaking as a parent who is tired of COVID. I'm speaking as a parent who's tired of masks. I'm speaking as a parent who is tired of staying vigilant for going into the third year in order to keep my 6-year-old, my 11-year-old, and my 89-year-old mother safe while making sure they're not isolated. And it's been difficult. It's been very difficult. And part of what's been difficult is watching over 2 years public health decisions and our children become political footballs. Not necessarily by people in this body, but across the country. Our children and public health decisions have become political footballs, and we all lose. I'm speaking as a parent of a Richmond public school children who appreciates the care with which the superintendent, the administration, and the school board has worked to balance the needs of educating our children and keeping them and the adults in the school building safe, because children aren't the only ones there. I'm speaking as a parent who thinks that as long as COVID or any other communicable disease is active, and especially when it's surging, that we need to make sure our schools have the flexibility to mitigate the spread. I'm speaking as a Black mother who is dismayed that, like many other health disparities, COVID, its long-term impacts, hospitalizations, and deaths have disproportionately impacted Black and brown communities. I'm speaking as a parent who agrees we need to listen to parents, all parents. We need to listen to the parents of 3- and 4-year-old preschool kids in school-based preschools who are still not eligible for the vaccine, although there's hope they will be soon. We should listen to the parents of the immunocompromised children and those with pre-existing conditions who are at greater risk of the negative impacts of COVID. We should listen to the physicians and the public health experts. The American Academy of Pediatrics, the Virginia chapter, my pediatrician, the CDC, based on a significant body of data, still recognize masking to mitigate the spread of COVID in our schools. And here's why. Because compared with adults, children and adolescents who are infected with COVID are more commonly asymptomatic, and they have mild or non-specific symptoms, but they can still spread it to others, even if they don't know they're infected. While children are less likely to develop severe illness or die from COVID, deaths among children 0 to 17 have occurred from COVID, including here in Virginia. The extent to which children suffer long-term consequences of COVID are still unknown. And although the rates of severe outcomes, such as hospitalization and death among children and adolescents, are low, a higher proportion of COVID cases in Black and brown school-age children found themselves hospitalized or requiring ICU admission than those among white school-age children.
We should also listen to the adults who work inside the school building, who are under more stress than ever before. And studies estimate that approximately 1/4 of teachers are at higher risk of serious consequences of COVID-19 because of underlying medical conditions, raising legitimate concerns about the occupational risk of COVID infections for teachers and school staff. As amended, this bill undermines the authority granted to local school divisions in our state constitution over the supervision of schools, including, as the Supreme Court has often said, decisions regarding the safety and welfare of our students. The bill does not include any requirement, which was in the bill we adopted last year, that schools adhere to the CDC's guidelines to the maximum extent practicable. Instead, we are substituting the opinions of politicians for research-based guidelines and public health experts. I am particularly concerned about the provision regarding preschool children because they still aren't eligible for vaccines and therefore are at higher risk of getting and spreading COVID. The bill has no provision for what happens in the event of another COVID variant. We've heard news that there may be one coming. Or if there's another communicable disease that could be even more deadly. The bill has no provision for what happens if there's an outbreak at a particular community or school. And while rates were going down in some jurisdictions, when session started, rates in the Richmond area were still at 30-40%. The bill has no provision for what happens if there aren't enough teachers or staff to teach at a school. And we've seen incidents of that. We will eventually get back to normal. We all want that. But we have to do it in a way that is safe for everyone, not a one-size-fits-all approach that doesn't meet the particular needs and circumstances of a particular community or school. And even the states that were referenced yesterday by the senator from Fairfax City, who have moved to lift mask mandates, have left flexibility for the local schools to do what they need to do to mitigate particular spreads in their communities. We don't have that here. So yes, I agree we need to listen to parents. We also need to listen to children. And I will tell you, by politicizing COVID mitigation, our kids are watching. And we have made an already stressful situation for them even more stressful. As they deal with the uncertainty and the disruption to their lives. My daughter was in preschool on a Friday when she went home from the only school she had ever known, where she had been since she was 3 months old, where it was for the first time in her conscious life, when I was able to send her to summer camp, I had to drop her off somewhere with people she didn't know in a building I couldn't go into to keep her safe. Do you think I wanted to do that? Do you think it's easy for me to now answer her questions? Where she asked me last night in tears, why can't I be virtual like I was last year when I'm home with you and I don't have to worry? While at the same time managing a son who was desperate to be in school last year, but is also worried about what happens if he gets sick and then he can't go visit his 89-year-old grandmother who misses her family. I'm ready for this to be over. But I want to make sure we continue to navigate this or any other disease in a way that helps bring parents and communities together to keep them safe and stop using political points to tear communities apart. And that's why I can't support this bill.
The chair recognizes the senator from Western Fairfax County, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Madam President. Speak to the bill.
The senator may continue.
I identify with the remarks made by my colleagues from Alexandria and the city of Richmond, but there's one other matter here that I don't think has been considered, and it didn't occur to me yesterday when we made this an option for parents, is that this has the potential to put our children in conflict with each other. I've spent 20 years of my life dealing with kids in congregate settings, in detention homes, in correctional facilities. And the most important thing is that kids have to be treated the same. And it's one thing to say, okay, everybody wears a mask. It's one thing to say nobody has to wear a mask. That's a decision that we make policy-wise. It's a tough decision. Difficult factors go into all that. But when you start bringing choice in, a couple of things happen. Is that kids will, in my experience, will find ways to divide themselves up. It'll be the maskers versus the unmaskers. Crips and Bloods, Jets and Sharks, all of those things that kids will just essentially do to each other. And I think those of you who and most of us have had children in this chamber, and we know what that's like. It can lead to bullying, humiliating other people. It'll be one experience in Southwest Virginia where parents may think a certain way, and a different experience in Arlington where people may think somewhat differently in terms of isolating kids who may be one of the few wearing a mask or one of the few not wearing a mask. Children can sometimes be cruel and thoughtless. And this has the potential of bringing a parent's political views, which unfortunately have been caught up in this pandemic, bringing their political views with their kids coming to school saying, well, my mom says, well, my dad says that this is this and this is that. And that can affect the way kids behave, the way they divide themselves up. It's an unhealthy kind of thing. I had to work assiduously in the facilities that I managed to make sure that those kinds of things didn't happen because it's essential for good relationships between kids so that they can learn. And this is a bad idea, a very bad idea, to allow that choice to take place because of the potential for trouble in the thousands of schools here in the Commonwealth. Thank you, Madam President.
The chair now recognizes the junior senator from Chesterfield, Senator Chase.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to speak to the bill.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Today we're here to talk about fear versus facts. According to the Virginia Department of Health's own website, from March the 15th, 2020 to January 22nd, 2022, there have been a total of 207,559 cases, of which 1,176% of those are hospitalizations. That's 0.56%. And 13 deaths, which if you round up is 0%, associated with children under the age of 17. These are the facts right off of the Virginia Department of Health's website. And yet children under the age of 17 are being forced to wear a mask, a cloth or disposable surgical mask, which even the manufacturer says right on the box of disposable masks that those masks do not prevent the spread of COVID, viruses like COVID. So why are we forcing kids to wear a mask when the risk is so low that they will be hospitalized or even die from COVID? I understand the concern and the fear of many of the parents. I have 4 kids myself, but we have to look at the science. If we're going to talk about science, I was in Walmart this fall when they had all the school supplies in, and I was very astonished to find a box of masks on there, and on it, it says, does not protect against viral infections. Another box said, this product is an ear loop mask. This product is not a respirator and will not provide any protections against COVID-19 and any other viruses or contaminants. Another photograph of a box of disposable masks shows a warning label that says the mask will not provide any protections against COVID-19. Wearing a mask for long periods of time can cause pulmonary fibrosis, as loose fibers are seen on all types of masks and may be inhaled, causing serious lung damage. There is a risk that viruses and bacteria may accumulate in the fabric of a mask, thereby increasing the amount of the virus being inhaled. Masks have actually been known to cause people to get sick. Masks collect fungi, bacteria, and viruses, and because of the moist air exhaled, masks are excellent breeding grounds. People who wear masks are breathing in their own carbon dioxide. With every breath you are breathing out or exhaling carbon dioxide and breathing right back in that carbon dioxide that is trapped behind the mask. Science shows, facts show, a mask can reduce blood oxygenation by up to 20%, leading to a possible loss of consciousness. And in fact, there was a road crash that was blamed on a driver wearing a mask because the police reported that the driver of a single car crash believed to have passed out behind the wheel after wearing a mask for too long. Now let's talk about studies, because we want to talk about facts and not fear. I don't know if you saw the new United Kingdom reports backing up the CDC findings on natural immunity, delivering a major blow to school masks, saying that school-aged children who never wear a mask had a lower chance of testing positive for COVID than those who, quote-unquote, always wear them. Another study of healthcare workers wearing masks showed that a third developed headaches requiring painkillers. Another study showed that 81% developed headaches and their work was affected. A study of 53 surgeons showed that there were statistically significant falls in blood oxygen levels after masks had been worn for a few hours. Research published in June 2020 suggested that the reduction in blood oxygen and the increase in carbon dioxide resulting from mask wearing causes a strain on the heart and kidneys. The facts show mask wearers are more likely to develop infection than non-mask wearers, and this may be due to the fact that masks reduce blood oxygen levels and adversely affect natural immunity. I think we get the point, but that's not all. Masks can cause hypercapnia, which is increased carbon dioxide. Symptoms of hypercapnia include drowsiness, dizziness, and fatigue. I have a whole list that I will spare you today of all the studies. But we need to look at the whole picture here, the whole child. Children are dealing from isolation, suicide, mental health issues. If we follow the science and we follow the facts and we stop with the fear, we will vote in favor of this bill. Thank you, Madam President.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Madam President. Rise to speak in support of the bill.
The senator may continue.
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I beg your indulgence. I know there's a lot of strong opinions on this, and you know where I stand. And I have listened respectfully to my colleagues. I do believe that there's going to be more dialogue on this as we go along, but I do believe we need to pass this bill. We need to pass it today, and let me tell you why. Last year, we passed Senate Bill 1303, and we had a very emotional floor debate on that, and quite frankly, bluntly, we had some of the exact same points being made against that piece of legislation. And I am convinced, I'm convinced that if we defeated this legislation, we will be back here next year having a debate all over again on the latest variant, the Zeta variant, whatever you want to call it. This argument will never go away. And the reason why we passed the bill last year, which, by the way, it did usurp the authority of our school boards, you're darn right it did, was because we were in a crisis. And we're now still in a crisis, but it's a different kind of crisis. It's a crisis in which every school board has been thrown into a situation where they are now caught up in literally a warfare without any guidance from the state, because our previous governor just handed down an executive order with no metrics. And our new governor handed down an executive order simply ordering the mask mandate to go away. And so it's going to come out of our body, just like it did last year, organically. We're going to come up with a solution. And yes, I realize it's happening right here on the floor, but you know what? That's how it happens, folks. Welcome to show business. And so let me talk a little bit about some of the points that have been raised, because these are legitimate points. And I want to go directly to the issue of the science, because I will tell you, I have read every single article I could find over the past few weeks about this issue. And the best one I found was the one I offered to hand out on the Senate floor a week ago, which was the January 26th article from The Atlantic magazine. Not Rolling Stone, not the National Review, The Atlantic magazine, which comprehensively went through all of the masking studies and, frankly, dismantled all of them and said there was no evidence that masking actually made a difference for children in their health outcomes or in community health outcomes. Now, I offered that article around to people. Some people took it. Most people did not. But I have yet to see a single person on the floor of the Senate attempt to rebut the conclusions that were made. And I've talked to the epidemiologist who wrote that article. She would offer to come down if people would listen to her. I don't think you'd want to, because it may not conform to your views. But let's talk about the real-world data. Because you may not be a doctor, and I'm certainly not a doctor, but I know how to read numbers. We've had states since the summer of 2021, let's just go with 2021, that have been allowing children to attend schools without a mandate. Large states with millions of people, millions of school children. Texas, Florida, Ohio. In some cases, similar demographics to Virginia. And I have been waiting for someone to come forward with the statistics showing that they have a higher rate of community transmission or a higher rate of youth mortality. And you know what? Those statistics don't exist because, frankly, the numbers are indistinguishable. We have the comparative data, folks. It's indistinguishable. So that's the science, that the states which have had no mask mandate have had no health sanction or community outbreaks any differently than Virginia has. Frankly, the state with the highest COVID mortality has been New York, which has had one of the strictest regimes. And I'm not blaming that. I'm just saying there's just no correlation statistically. Now, let's move on to school boards, because I am so sympathetic to school boards. And by the way, I had a text from the chair of the Prince William County School Board, who, by the way, is an ophthalmologist and is furious at me for my last bill, like my colleague over there. But he basically made the point, look, we're not built for this type of debate. We're not built for this type of high-energy partisan warfare. We just want to educate kids. And I'm not saying this is the consensus opinion. It's not. But I can tell you there are people in Northern Virginia who would like for us to end this now. Now, it's not a popular position to be against masks. It's popular to be for masks. And there's obviously an overlap politically between blue counties and a consensus for masking, which leads me to my next point. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution gives us all the right to express ourselves, and it limits public schools in limiting expression. And when you force a child to wear a mask without any scientific basis for doing that, you're forcing them to adopt a statement that they or their family may not believe in. Now, again, if there's scientific data to back it up, that's one thing. But if there's no scientific data and you're just saying, no, wear the mask because that's what the community wants, that's a violation of the First Amendment, folks. There used to be something called the ACLU in this state. Okay? So some of us need to just take a look at these civil liberty issues. That's my concern. I appreciate what Senator Marsden said, that kids are going to get picked on and there's going to be mask versus no mask and debates. But the problem is, if you follow that theory, then you have to ban masks altogether unless you require everybody wear one. It's like, it becomes a bipolar world, and I don't think that's the answer either, because I do think parents have the right to protect family members. I do. I don't think cloth masks have any value, but you know what? That's not my choice to make for somebody else's family. Let me move on to a couple other points. CDC. The CDC is a federal agency, and look, I get it. You love it when they're in your corner, and when they're not, they're a pain. But I will say that the CDC, to say they've been a little bit sluggish in changing their recommendations would be the understatement of the millennium. Don't forget, up till a few weeks ago, if you were exposed to somebody that had COVID, you were supposed to spend 14 days in quarantine. Guess what, folks? We wouldn't be even in this room right now. We'd all be home. So obviously we didn't take that seriously. So we tend to pick and choose what we take seriously from the CDC. I don't have a doctorate in medicine, but I do have a doctorate in common sense. And I will tell you that if you look at the statistics and they're telling you that there's no variation between communities with mask mandates and communities without mask mandates, that the mask mandate is not protecting people's lives. Now, let me move on to one more point about emergencies. I know my colleague is going to talk to emergencies. Nothing in this bill will change the governor's authority under Title 44. I litigated that before the Supreme Court and I lost, okay? Talk to the loser. The governor has untrammeled ability to declare a state of emergency and suspend all state laws, period, full stop. Nothing in this law will change that. If somebody wants an enactment clause at some point down the road, we can deal with that. But frankly, it would be a gratuity. Nothing will change that. Now, let me get to the last point. Let me talk about kids. I made a speech in front of the Virginia Chamber of Commerce about 2 months ago in which I said we have treated our children as second-class citizens over the past 2 years. I was wrong. We've treated them as third-class citizens. We have taken actions against our children. We've closed schools. We've shut down sports. We've canceled activities. We've forced them to wear masks for 6 to 8 hours on end without a break, without any evidence that it's actually beneficial to their health. Can you imagine if we did that to our pets? We'd have protesters out the building. I wouldn't be able to schedule enough hearings in the Ag Committee. But we do it to our kids, and therefore it's okay. Well, you know what? It's not okay. You know, as I said, there's only 2 things I take seriously in this life, one being a dad, the other one being a business owner. And one thing I've learned is childhood is a moment. I mean, you turn around and it's gone, and a child grows up. And when a child has lost 2 years to this, not based on science, I'm sorry, but based on somebody's construction of science, which frankly is drifting away, that's a tragedy. And we can end that tragedy. We have the ability to end it. Now, again, this is not, I don't think, going to be the final vote on this bill during this session. Maybe it will. But I will say this. We are going to resolve the mask wars during this session. They're going to be over. We're not going to come back and deal with them anymore. We're going to resolve them. It's going to happen on this body. I hope you will join me in voting for this bill. Thank you.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Madam President, I had not intended to speak on the bill, but with all the excitement here, I thought I would say a word or two. I'm shocked that...
The gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. To speak against the bill, I'm actually shocked that health care has become a political issue. It shouldn't be a political issue. It should be based on science. It should be based on the experts. The fact is, it's become a political issue, which is incredible. And we do have the CDC, we do have healthcare providers, we have others to inform the decisions, and the school boards should have the authority, as they do now, based on their local conditions and based on the CDC. Wearing masks, why is that a political issue? It makes no sense at all. Like vaccination, people who get vaccinated, or very few of them, end up dying. We know that as a matter of science, as a matter of fact. When I was stationed overseas in Japan for a year, I can report that the Japanese wear masks all the time. You go to Tokyo or any big city, they're wearing masks partly, I guess, because the atmosphere is not clean and they're protecting themselves, but also when they get a cold to keep other people getting sick because they're protecting themselves and protecting others. Nothing wrong with wearing masks. People get tired of wearing masks. I think we all do. But decisions on health should not be based on convenience or what's popular, but based on science. And for that reason, I intend to vote against this bill. Thank you, Mr. President. Madam President.
Chair recognizes the gentlelady from Fauquier, Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Madam President. I know that this debate has gone on for quite some time, and I feel a little guilty standing up and trespassing on people's time, but I feel very strongly.
For what purpose does the gentlelady
Sorry,
rise?
Madam President, I stand to speak to the motion.
Senator has the floor.
As I was about to say, I think it's worth me taking a minute to say a few things that I feel very strongly about, because I believe that this is the most important bill that we will debate in this legislative session. And I know we're here to work on the budget, and we're here to deal with a lot of very weighty issues that matter to Virginians. But I can assure you that of the people who are communicating with me now, this is the number one issue that they care about. This is what they're calling my office about. This is what they're emailing about. This is what they're texting about. This is what the parent text threads and group chats are all about. And I would ask the members of this body to think about it. When will it end? If we continue the conversation and continue to make this a political discussion in this chamber and in the other chamber and wait until every single person is satisfied with every single scientific fact, how much longer will that take? And that's all our families and our parents are saying. And much of what I was going to comment on has already been said, probably far more eloquently than I could say, by the senior senator from Richmond City, when she talked very wisely about how this is tearing communities apart and how we have politicized an issue that should never have been political. Healthcare isn't political. Keeping each other safe isn't political. And certainly, how it is that we come up with this off-ramp shouldn't be political. It should be practical, and it should be common sense. And I applaud the two patrons of this bill for bringing common sense to the legislature and attempting to depoliticize and de-weaponize something that has been the most disruptive thing in my children's life, in my family's life, and in the families of the kids in our schools, our public and our private schools. And I will tell you, to quote the senior senator from Richmond City, she said, it's about political points to tear communities apart. And you know what we're doing right now? We're standing here in this body making political points, talking about tearing communities apart, talking about, well, you're going to pit one kid against another kid. Well, I got news for you. You know what's happening right now? There are families who have one kid going to one school where they're required to mask, and they have an older sibling going to another school where they're not. And talk about pitting each other against each other. Kids are super, super mad about that, and their parents are even more upset. And so while we stand here and we pass judgment on something that is brought to you here in a bipartisan way, based on science and based on common sense, and yes, read the Atlantic article if you have any doubt. We stand here having this discussion, and yet 3 Democratic governors have just come out and said, okay, we're repealing the mask mandate. And we're not standing up here excoriating them and saying that they're outrageous and it's irresponsible and that the governor of Delaware and the governor of Connecticut and the governor of New Jersey are just unbelievably irresponsible in putting all the citizens in those 3 states at risk. We're not saying that. And the reason that we're not is because we're standing here in this chamber trying to politicize something that I can tell you that if you had the opportunity to let parents come and plead with you and listen to what they say about the toll it's taken on their children, how it's affected them and their mental health, and when they go home and have fun weekends and spend weekends with other families and play outside and do all these things in the world, and yes, go shopping and do everything that they do without a mask on, and then come back to school on Monday morning, and suddenly they're in this very unpleasant, sanitized, masked environment where suddenly the pandemic hits them right square in the head. That's a really unpleasant way to go to school. It has made my children, who used to love going to school on Mondays, used to cry when I picked them up from late gates and said, can I please stay longer? It has made them hate their time in school. And I've heard people say, oh, kids, it's masks. They don't care that much. They care. And you know what? Parents were really good about it. We were all really good about it. And we were super compliant because we cared about our colleagues. We cared about our families. We cared about our friends who were immunosuppressed. And we cared about people who were fragile. And we were super, super respectful. And our families have done that. Our teachers have done that. Our superintendents have done that. But you know what they're saying now? And it might not be politically popular in every community to say it, so lots of them are saying it very quietly. But they're saying it, and they're saying it to anybody who will listen, whom they think will sympathize. And what they're saying is, please, 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 just give us an off-ramp. Just let it end. So if you can think of a better solution to do what the governors in Delaware and Connecticut and New Jersey have done and solve this problem, then it would be solved. But absent that, I don't know what other choice we have but to pass legislation like this that is actually commonsensical. And I would never vote for something that I didn't believe was supported by science, that I thought put my community at risk, put my children at risk, put their teachers at risk. I would not do that. But I can tell you that we're now 3 years into this, and I'm not certain that we see any light at the end of the tunnel on COVID. It will mutate. It will be around. And I don't want to be here or be watching this body 5 years from now, standing here talking about, again, how are we going to manage this issue? So I would just urge the members of the body to please support this bill. And I know that it doesn't change anybody's mind likely, but it's worth me standing here and begging if it will change one mind, because I promise you the families that you represent are so eager for you to do this for them. Thank you, Madam President.
The chair recognizes the gentlelady from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to speak very briefly to the bill before us.
The senator may continue.
Thank you, Madam President. Boy, this is certainly a very passionate issue, and I know that there are strong views on either side of this issue, but we are creating a structure which we do not have to create. Our Constitution, Article 8, clearly gives the authority to operate our school systems to school boards. It's right in it's in the state constitution. Our school boards are elected. They are closest to the communities they serve. They are held accountable by parents, and they're held accountable by a wide range of parents, not just parents who pick and choose which lawmakers to call because they want a sympathetic ear. School boards also are held accountable for consulting with public health officials and scientists and for understanding their unique community transmission numbers. Most importantly, the school boards are working very hard at keeping in-person learning. We all want that. Parents are very stressed. Children need to be with each other. We understand the mental health benefits of in-person learning as well as the academic benefits. But to make that happen, schools have to look at mitigation strategies. Some of you are correct. Masks may not be the best mitigation strategy. But if you're teaching students in a very old and dilapidated building which does not have a modern HVAC system, good circulation, windows that work, and a number of other environmental factors that would make that building safe, school masks become a more important mitigation factor. But what really bothers me is school boards have made decisions on these masks. They've made decisions. There was a court case, 7 school districts sued the governor over his executive order. A circuit court judge, actually out of Arlington, argued that the order did not meet the legal test, mainly because of our Constitution, and yes, because of the bill that we passed last year. And the Supreme Court, as far as I know, just didn't act on the case or threw it back for technical reasons. So now our school boards are asking themselves, what is our pathway forward? We've made a decision, and now the General Assembly is trying to somehow unravel that decision, and we're totally confused. We don't know which way we should go. I think we are really adding a level of confusion that could take us backwards. Can we please just wait for a moment? Let this court case play itself out completely. Support our school boards. Give them the kind of information they need to make the decisions that will keep our schools open. Let's be true leaders and not just react to the last parent who spoke to us. Thank you, Madam President.
The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, rising to speak in favor of the measure.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I think the debate on the floor is indicative of the debate that's going on in our communities. It's the debate I had to have with my daughter, who's in 4th grade. Many of you have heard me talk about her, and Reagan. And in the county I live in, we were fortunate. Our leaders made the correct decision for our children to go to school right from the beginning. So they were in person, in school, and parents had the ability to choose. They chose whether they wanted to do online education or in person. And the vast majority of parents chose in person. The numbers have been absolutely clear and stunning. Kids in Hanover did better, are doing better academically than every other jurisdiction around. It's just flat out stunning how much better. Madam President, as we went through the debate, Hanover decided that mask would be optional, that parents would have a choice. Parents would make the decisions. So if a parent decided that their child should wear a mask, then they would be able to do that. I have a different view than some of my colleagues. I think parents being able to make that choice is the right way to go. Parents should make that choice for their children. But as I had to make that choice, as we had to sit down with Reagan and decide, I had a conversation with her. And she pleaded not to wear a mask. She said, Diddy, I can't see the facial expression of people. I don't know how they're reacting. It is uncomfortable for me to wear all day. It bothers me. And she got very emotional. So I had a distinct view of what I had planned to do, but we thought about it, reflected overnight. And the next day, the first thing she asked, 5:30, she was up. And she came in, stood right beside me, tapped me, woke me up, and said, do I have to wear a mask this morning? That was what she wanted to know, because it was the sole thing on her mind, how she was going to go through school. The decision that I made, trying to balance things, we all take our experiences and beliefs into place. And I said, darling, when you go into school, you're going to have to wear a mask. And when you walk down the hall between classes, you're going to have to wear a mask. And that is to be respectful of other people who are making a different choice on masking. I went through with her. She was very unhappy with me, very unhappy, cried tears. It was a challenging morning. We drove to school, and I told her the story of Paul in some of the letters to other believers, and how if you have some challenges, if it bothers somebody else, then you need to be respectful. And that's why when you're around people that feel very strongly a different way around masks, you wear it. It's why some of us in this body, when we're associating with others, we put our mask on. I don't wear it all the time, but I have it right here. When I go up to talk to other people, I try to put it on, because that is the respectful thing that you do for others. But when we're talking about our children, we should be able to let parents make that choice. People should be able to be respectful in that arena as well. Our children are with each other in these classrooms for lengthy periods of time. We have done a lot of harm to the social well-being and into the personal psychological well-being of our children over the last 2 years by decisions that we have made. This puts that decision back with parents where it should be. You might agree with a parent's decision, or you might not agree with a parent's decision. I personally feel strongly it's that parent's decision to make that choice. Madam President, There'll be constituents of mine that do not agree with the choice I made with Reagan. There'll be constituents of mine that will not agree with my vote here today. But this is a very important matter for the future of our children. We are going to have to associate with each other for years to come through this health situation and probably other challenging situations going forward. Being able to have conversations and to work towards solutions that respect different views and coming up with a way to also be respectful will be a challenge. We need to teach our children and lead by example that we can have different views, come up with ways to have solutions, and to have different choices going forward. Madam President, even though there are different views here on this body today, I hope that going forward, we will still try to work together to make sure our children are in a classroom learning in person, and they have the opportunity, if they so choose, to see our facial expressions and how we react to them.
The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Bath, Senator Deeds.
Madam Chair, I rise to speak very briefly to the bill.
The senator has the floor.
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I had not intended to rise on this bill or speak. I understand that a lot's been said, but a lot has been said that needs to be remarked upon. And I just have 2 points to make. Number one, this is not about a mask mandate. This is about us taking authority away from local school boards. Local school boards who can react to the local, what's on the ground locally, who can listen to the parents and listen to the citizenry of the districts they represent. We're taking that authority away today. We're doing it with this bill, with paragraph C. The second point I want to make is this bill is not about the science. I don't care what any of you think. And I don't care what you think you know. Nobody knows what the next variant of this pandemic is going to produce. Nobody knows what the next pandemic is going to produce. But we're putting language in the code that's going to apply to that. That's going to say that our school boards cannot make decisions about how best to respect the health of their students. That's why I'm voting against this bill. Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam President.
The junior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator Kiggins.
Madam President, I rise to speak to the bill.
The senator may say on.
Thank you, Madam President. I just think one of the most awesome things we do here in the Virginia Senate and as a body is that we can truly enact some real meaningful changes, and meaningful change that our constituents are proud of, hopefully, most of the time. I think in all of our debate, words that I've heard that I really can relate to are words like common sense and off-ramp. And I know that my phone has blown up with quite a few texts and emails from some of my, what I would consider common sense and just non-political friends that say thank you for what happened in the Senate yesterday. And I know all of us who pay attention to news and the media also could echo that, gosh, it's gotten a lot of attention, I think, since yesterday, since we had this debate, the same debate. So people do care about this issue, and it's something that we do have an opportunity, I feel like, here to enact the meaningful change that we all want to bring. You know, we talk a lot about science, and I don't even need to get into that, but the primary mitigation strategy these days is absolutely vaccination. And if people really feel strongly, there are vaccinations available for their children if they're willing and able. So it's one thing that we do have some other solutions. The other mitigations we're discussing today, like the masking debate, these things are optional. It's not a debate about if masks are helpful or not, but it's a debate about having that choice. You can still wear a mask if you want to. If you feel unsafe, wear the mask. If you don't want to wear the mask, don't. It doesn't mean that we don't care. And I just want to echo the Senator from Fauquier's passion when she spoke about her children and just the struggles that many of us as parents with our kids going back to school. And I mean, I too have had to listen and watch my children be teary about how school is not fun anymore. They don't want to go there. Their school used to be fun. Why did my daughter's older brothers, have much more fun than she's had? She hasn't been able to go to the same dances and sporting activities. And we've taken so much away from that. And that as a parent is really hard to watch. And it's really hard to to just, try to tell them it will be okay, and I'm sure school will be fun again one day. But we can make it more fun for them. We have the opportunity. That's such an awesome responsibility, and just one of the amazing things we can do here in the Senate. The discussion about kids being politicized, kids have been politicized for a long time. I mean, I know my own kids, especially during campaign season and whatnot, kids talk. They talk about politics. They talk about other controversial issues. This is just one more of those issues. But it's an issue that's dividing, and we're not helping, and there's really an opportunity for us to help. I think it's also a great opportunity for us to allow kids to teach them to care about others, because I think us as a body, and all of us would agree, when we are in the presence of someone that feels uncomfortable, we put the mask on. If there's a store I go into and it says, you can't come in here without a mask, I put my mask on. So I think it's just, I'd like to teach that kind of empathy to my children, and I think this is just another way to do that. There's a lot of hysteria out there, I feel like, with COVID and COVID-19 and all these different variants, but we can have a small piece of ending some of that hysteria, and this is what we can do to help. And with that, I ask that we pass Senate Bill 739.
The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Madam President. I would ask if the senator from Enrico would yield for a question.
Will the senator from Enrico yield?
Yes, Madam President, I will yield.
Senator Locke.
Thank you, Madam President. I would ask the senator that prior to yesterday, what was the premise of Senate Bill 739?
Senator Donovan.
Madam President,
Okay.
the language of the bill, can you hear me okay? The language of the bill was the language from 1303 to open schools for in-person education.
Okay. Thank you, Madam President. Speaking to the bill.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. So prior to yesterday's substitute, the major premise of Senate Bill 739 was simply to address opening of schools and having schools remain open. So the substitute yesterday is what morphed this bill into a discussion about mask mandates. So until yesterday, this had nothing to do with masks or mask mandates or anything else. It is the substitute of yesterday that morphed this bill into the discussion that has lasted for over an hour today. And so what we've also heard today is about the governors of Delaware, Connecticut, and New Jersey, which has also been politicized because those governors happen to be Democrats. But we've also heard we don't want to politicize anything, but because those governors are Democrats, that too has been politicized. And that they too have been addressing mask mandates in their states. But what we did not hear is that they are leaving it to their local school divisions or school districts to make their determination of what will happen with masks in those particular school districts, and leaving it up to their school boards to make a determination about what will happen with masks. So you only get parts of the information or parts of what will happen as it relates to mask mandates. So, and one of the other things that we heard is how much emails and information that we've gotten as it relates to masks and the requirements. But as of this substitute yesterday, I don't know about other people, but my emails and my text messages and my phone mail have been inundated with calls from my district of school board members, teachers, everybody's saying, what are you people crazy? What is wrong with you in terms of trying to supersede school boards, and our authority to determine what is in the best interest of our school districts, to make a determination about what's in the best interest of our staff, of our teachers, and of our students. Let us make those decisions, because what this is now going to do is undermine our authority. So that is the reason that I am not supporting Senate Bill 739. Thank you, Madam President.
The chair recognizes the junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Madam President. Speaking to the measure, Senate Bill 739.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, ladies and gentlemen of this body, one of the things that I absolutely revere about this body is listening to the life experiences of the 39 state senators that appear here. And I never tire about listening to the experiences of their family or their children. Because as citizen legislators, that's exactly what we do. We bring those experiences to this body. And with that said, let me share a couple of points with you. I too have those same life experiences. I'm the son of a cardiologist and an internist. I have 4 young kids. I don't miss a pediatric or pediatrician's appointment. I have had my kids in public school, parochial school. I've had them masked, and I'll be the first to say this loud from the mountaintop. I believe in absolutely the efficacy of vaccinations. I absolutely believe in the efficacy of wearing those masks. And every day, there's 4 of them that gather their lunch, their backpack, and the mask, and they go outside. Now, I'm also aware of what has happened to these children. At 7:15 this morning, my youngest, Maverick, his mom put a Q-tip in his nose and swirled it around each nostril 5 times. He's crying about it because he was exposed to somebody that had, at his preschool, had to be quarantined for 14 days, then had to have a test before he could go back, and I had to bring that test to daycare this morning. 3 other kids that are in public school, and they wear masks. Now, I asked one of my children the other day, are there less children wearing masks today? This was after the governor's mandate that the governor said they wasn't going to abide by the mandate. Are there less children at Enon wearing masks? And they said, yes, there are. I said, are you wearing your mask? And my oldest son said, yes. Why are you wearing your mask? I said. And it was very succinct. Because mommy said I had to. But other children were not. And then we went on to something else. So, the gentleman from Fairfax, Senator Marsden, talked about it causing a little bit of division because some children are maskers, others are not. I didn't note that. They just accepted that one parent required their child to wear masks, the others didn't. Now, I just finished saying that I believe in the efficacy of masks, but I've got to say this. The empirical evidence, as suggested by the gentlelady from Henrico County, Senator Donovan, is that at the very least, masks do not have the same efficacy that we thought they had back in March and April of 2020. And I've got to agree with the senator from Fairfax City that there is some modicum, at the very least, of evidence out there that masking doesn't protect the children as much as we thought we did. I'm still going to have all of mine wear a mask, and when I can vaccinate them, I will. But here's how I see the difference, and here's how my vote comes down. Whereas the senator from Bath County said, we are taking away the authority from the school boards, the other way of looking at it is we are telling parents what to do. And as a legislator, I just don't believe that I have the audacity to tell them what they can do and cannot do, even though I believe in the efficacy of the vaccination and the mask. It's for that reason that I'm going to vote yes to this measure. Thank you.
The chair recognizes the senator from Eastern Fairfax County, Senator Sorovell.
Thank you, Madam President. Speaking to the bill briefly.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you. I think most everything's been said at this point. A couple points I want to make. First of all, this whole issue has been so heavily politicized. I think it's basically impossible to talk about science. I don't think it's possible to debate whether masks work or not. I don't think it's possible to debate even vaccines anymore to some extent. It seems like that's even been heavily politicized. CDC guidance. We passed a law that says our school boards are supposed to base their decisions on CDC guidance. Guess what happens? the blue school boards go one way, the red school boards go the other, based on the CDC guidance, because nobody can agree on what the CDC guidance says. At the end of the day, I'm going to put up a red vote, a light red vote on this one, because I think the bill is written right now is not perfect, and it needs more work. All of the politicization that's occurred is going to create more problems down the road once COVID's gone. I'm horribly concerned about the political debate that's happened about vaccines is going to cause a lot more families not to get their children vaccinated. I'm worried that we're going to start seeing measles outbreaks in our schools or other types of outbreaks. And we have a statute before us right now that a bunch of you are about to vote green on that says if you get a measles outbreak in your local elementary school, the school board has to go beg the governor for some kind of emergency order about it instead of being able to do a mask mandate at their school. And I think our school boards ought to have at least that flexibility. And from my point of view, this statute ought to have, with regard to this pandemic, some kind of time restriction in it or some sort of type of metrics. But what Virginia really needs is some clarity. Virginia needs clarity today so all this conflict will stop. And I just want to say, I saw the governor taking credit for this yesterday. And that really disappointed me because I don't think he deserves a lot of credit. By dropping an executive order in violation of Virginia law, all he did was create more chaos. The way we pass laws in this state, the way we govern in a democracy, is the legislature passes laws, the governor signs them, and the courts interpret them. And that's the way this should have proceeded, which is kind of what we're doing right now. And the reason I put a green vote on the mask amendment was because I think we need to have a debate and some conclusion to the mask discussion. And so I'll be voting red today, but I hope when we see some amendments to this bill, or maybe when it comes through from the House, that we can get this language straight because it needs more work. And I think if this language was worked on further, we might be able to get to a solution that is more bipartisan instead of one that continues to be politicized. Thank you, Madam President.
The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Roanoke County, Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Speaking to the bill.
The gentleman may say on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill is bipartisan, despite what was said. It was all very clear how it came about. And it's fascinating how much I've heard about how laws in this Commonwealth are made by this body and the body down the hall and signed into law by the governor, when we all lived through the last 2 years in which we understand that under the laws of this Commonwealth, they can be by individual fiat, and they have the full force and authority of law. And if we don't like that, we ought to pass my bill that says the General Assembly gets to intervene within 45 days of that. I don't expect that will happen, and I'm sure Governor Youngkin will be able to find some emergency powers along the way that maybe other people don't like. But regarding this today, we keep hearing about the state constitution and our school boards, and we seem to bypass the very first section of Article 8 on education. The General Assembly shall provide for a system of free public education in secondary schools for all children of school age throughout the Commonwealth, and shall seek to ensure that an educational program of high quality is established and continually maintained. And we have that responsibility. I would suggest that's one of the most important responsibilities we have in this General Assembly. And to hear about authority being taken away from local school boards, I didn't hear anyone on the other side lamenting when the school divisions in my part of the Commonwealth wanted to have parental authority over masks and voted that way. And when it was first said that under Senate Bill 1303 that was the situation, then an emergency mandate, executive order, emergency order through the Commissioner of Health came out and told us, no, all of our school children needed to be masked regardless. And I wish that there was the same preference then as there is now. I understand as governors change, views change, but this is great bipartisan legislation. I appreciate that the only doctor in the entire General Assembly has brought it forward for our consideration, and I appreciate what she's doing for families across Virginia.
The chair now recognizes the patron of the bill again, Senator Donovan, the senator from Enrico.
Thank you, Madam President. And I will say only the most important things.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Try and say only the most important things triggered by this conversation. The first is I would encourage everybody to read the Supreme Court order on the Chesapeake lawsuit, and I will quote it now, so that you have the opportunity to see the breadth of it. And because it wasn't necessarily, maybe some of the nuances were not represented in the press. It says Senate Bill 1303 necessarily gives the boards a degree of discretion to modify or even forego those strategies as they deem appropriate for their individual circumstances. Not a mandate for masks. Discretion. Madam President, I must start by speaking to my friend, the senior senator from Richmond, because her comments were so compelling. And as a physician and as a mother, I empathize with her sense of frustration and exhaustion. And it's I think, what we've all heard echoed from our constituents all over Virginia these past couple of weeks, and brings us to this conversation today. It's confusing and stressful because it's scary and it doesn't make sense. And I'm going to tell you that truth makes sense. The truth here is that the only mitigation that actually works is the vaccine. And a vaccinated grandmother would be very, very safe from healthy grandchildren. Shouldn't go over if they have a cold, but you shouldn't have to worry about anything else. And that has been misconstrued. Why is this a political situation? What is the politicization here? It is the fact that political bodies have made this decision. And it is therefore absolutely political. This bill uncouples the politics. We have clear precedent in Virginia that parents have the prerogative to make medical decisions for their children. We have little or no evidence from the Atlantic article. However, 2 years into this pandemic, keeping unproven measures in place is no longer justifiable. We must evolve. Science doesn't stand still. We did masks and boxes and other things because we thought maybe they might help, but they have not proven to do so. I will say further that you have before you a conflict between two priorities, constitutional priorities in Virginia. One is that school boards get to decide policy for their districts, but the other is that we are a parental rights state. And you're going to have to choose which authority seated by the Constitution you're going to stand by today. I would say that the most egregious politicization of this situation is the message that we've gotten from supposedly trusted experts that have created the kind of anxiety that results in the conflicts we see today. And that is the suggestion that if you don't wear your mask, you harm me. I must therefore control you. No. Not only is that not accurate scientifically, it's un-American. I decide for myself. I look at the risks. I never, ever tell a patient what medical decision they should make. I tell them the positives and the negatives of each of their alternatives, and they decide, and we should not, as political bodies, be deciding for individuals in Virginia where there is no evidence to show that these obtrusive interventions that actually harm children should be perpetuated. You're on the wrong side of this if you vote against this bill. And I will conclude with that, and I hope that we will pass this bill and move it forward to the House for quick action. Thank you, Madam President.
The question is, shall Senate Bill 739 pass? All those in favor of passage will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 17.
Ayes 21, noes 17. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 673, Correctional Facilities Local Entry Privileges.
Chair recognizes the junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, this bill simply allows the governor and members of the General Assembly...
The gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, this bill, Senate Bill 673, allows the governor and members of the General Assembly and the agents of the board to go into the interior of any local correctional facility, a jail. It is consistent with Section 53.1-30, which allows the governor and members of the General Assembly to go into any state correctional facility. I'd ask that the Senate Bill 673 pass.
The question is, shall Senate Bill 673 pass? Those in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 35, noes 3.
Ayes 35, noes 3. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 689, Foster Care Barrier Crimes.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Williamsburg, Senator Mason.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that Senate Bill 689 pass, and speaking the motion.
The senator may continue.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President and members of the Senate, we debated the larger package of barrier crimes bill, I believe, earlier this week, discussing giving folks the opportunity to apply for waiver in certain circumstances if they had them in their past. This is simply targeting the portion of that bill that speaks to foster care. If any of you deal with your social service professionals at home, and I hope and I'm sure many of you do, you will hear them say that the biggest obstacle that they have to something that we've been working very hard recently to promote, and that is kinship care, are the presence of barrier crimes in their past. In fact, one of my social services professionals reached out to me last night and asked if she could have a family member come testify today. Madam President, I said they might do a better job than I will, but not today. We can't do that. This simply allows the federal regulations to apply regarding foster care. It is the same as Senator Edwards' portion of the bill, with the exception of adding any check against the sex offender registry. This says that you are excluded if you had crimes against children, abuse or neglect against children, spousal abuse, or crimes involving violence. So we had some discussions in subcommittee as to what that would entail. But, Madam President, this would allow federal law to govern and openly open up some opportunities for the adoption of children when there are issues in the past, but in the second part of the federal law, specific to some of the issues in the past, more than 5 years in the past. With that, Madam President, I hope we'll pass the bill.
The question is, shall Senate Bill 689 pass? All those in favor of passage will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 31, noes 7.
Ayes 31, noes 7. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 722, Improper Parking Prohibits prohibits in Planning District 8 parking a vehicle with wheels fully on curb, etc.
The gentleman from Western Fairfax County, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the bill pass. And speaking to that.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. What the bill says is that no vehicle in Planning District 8, that's Northern Virginia, shall be parked with its wheels partially or fully on the curb or straddling the curb of a highway right-of-way. Any vehicle improperly parked with its wheels fully or partially or straddling the curb of a highway right-of-way shall be subject to a fine or be removed or under the direction of a law enforcement officer or parking enforcement officer. Here's the problem. I have a few places in Northern Virginia where this is popping up. The one I'm most familiar with is in my district, and it's a 1.5 mile long road. On one side are apartments, condos, townhouses, heavily occupied, and there's a road in front of them. And on the other side of that road is a curb, a riparian boundary between that curb and the sound wall of Interstate 495, the Beltway. And cars have decided that they can pull their two right wheels up on the curb, or their two front wheels over the curb. In other words, if you don't have enough room to parallel park, just pull your car straight in, put it up over the curb. Creates a big mud mess. It's encouraged all kinds of dumping. A lot of the folks who live there are small contractors. They come back, they park their car up on the curb, they dump sinks, mattresses, drywall, wood, any detritus left over from their job, because it's easier to do that because one of my good citizens, Amy Gould, organizes a cleanup twice a year, and they know it's going to be picked up. It is creating a real mess. We're just doing it in Planning District 8. Don't want to interfere with anybody else's issues there. It's under the discretion of law enforcement. So if somebody has to pull up a utility vehicle or something like that in an emergency, they're not violating the law. Police officers will use good judgment. But this is a problem we've got to begin solving in this particular area and from what I understand, some other sites in Northern Virginia. So I reiterate my motion that the bill pass.
The question is, shall Senate Bill 722 pass? Those in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 26, noes 12.
Ayes 26, noes 12. The bill passes.
Uncontested calendar, Senate bills on second reading.
The chair recognizes the gentleman, the senior senator from Fairfax County, Senator Saslaw.
Madam President, I move that all Senate bills on second reading on the uncontested calendar, pages 8 through 13, and that's Senate Bill 280 through 729, be advanced to their engrossment and third reading in a block after the adoption of any of the amendments thereto. Any senator desiring to remove a bill from this block, please do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill.
The question is, shall all Senate bills on second reading on the uncontested calendar on pages 8 through 13, Senate Bills 280 through 729, be engrossed and advanced to their third reading in the block after the adoption of the amendments, that any senator desiring to remove a bill from the block will do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill. All in favor of the motion will record their votes, will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The clerk will now read the number of the bills.
Senate Bill 280, reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor with a substitute.
The gentleman from Alexandria, Senator Ebend.
I move the committee substitute.
The question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 329, reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor with a substitute.
The gentleman from Loudoun, Senator Bell.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the committee substitute.
The question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. Substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 338, reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor. Senate Bill 347, reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor with a substitute.
The gentleman from Loudoun, Senator Bell.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the committee substitute.
Question is, shall the substitute be accepted? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 377, reported from the Committee on Local Government. Senate Bill 387, reported from the Committee on Local Government. Senate Bill 428, reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor with a substitute.
The gentlelady from Enrico, Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the committee substitute.
Question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? Those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 446, reported from the Committee on Local Government with a substitute.
The gentlelady from northwestern Fairfax County, Senator Boysko.
Madam Chair, I move the committee substitute.
The question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 589, reported from the Committee on Local Government. Senate Bill 627, reported from the Committee on Local Government. Senate Bill 633, reported from the Committee on the Judiciary with amendments.
The gentleman from Franklin County, Senator Sandley.
Thank you, Madam President. I now move that the committee amendments to SB 633 be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The committee amendment is agreed to.
Senate Bill 658, reported from the Committee on the Judiciary with a substitute.
The gentlelady from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the committee substitute.
The question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 660, reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor with a substitute.
The gentleman from Augusta, Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the committee substitute be agreed to.
The question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 681, reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor with a substitute.
The gentlelady from Fauquier, Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the substitute be agreed to.
Question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 699, reported from the Committee on Local Government. Senate Bill 729, reported from the Committee on the Judiciary with a substitute.
The gentleman from Augusta, Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Madam President.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Wrong senator. Still a gentleman. The gentleman from Augusta, Senator Ruff.
Thank you,
Mecklenburg.
Madam President. I think I move the committee substitute.
The question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The substitute is agreed to. The question is, shall the Senate bills now be engrossed and advanced to their third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bills are engrossed and advanced to their third reading.
Regular calendar, Senate bills on second reading. Senate Bill 15, a bill relating to insurance paid family leave, reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor with a substitute.
The gentlelady from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the substitute be agreed to.
The question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? Those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The substitute is agreed to. The senator from Arlington.
Thank you, Madam President. I now move that the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed in advance to its third reading.
Senate Bill 85, a bill to provide for a special election relating to transition of a city to town status sunset.
The gentleman
from the Committee on Local Government with amendment.
The gentleman from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Madam President. I now move that the committee amendment be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee amendment be agreed to? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment is agreed to. The gentleman from Franklin County.
Thank you, Madam President. I now move that Senate Bill 85 be engrossed and advanced to its third constitutional reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 110, relating to juvenile offenders' parole eligibility, reported from the Committee on Finance and Appropriations.
The junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that Senate Bill 110 be engrossed and passed along to its third constitutional reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? Those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 137, Sentencing Guidelines Written Explanation Appeal, reported from the Committee on the Judiciary with a substitute.
The gentleman from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Madam President, I move that the committee substitute be agreed to.
The question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? Those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The substitute is agreed to. Again, the gentleman from Roanoke City.
Madam President, I now move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 407, Disability Insurance, Disability Arising Out of Childbirth, reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor with a substitute.
The gentlelady from Enrico, Senator Donovan.
Madam President, I move the committee substitute.
The question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? Those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The substitute is agreed to. The gentlelady from Enrico.
Thank you, Madam President. I now move that we engross the bill and carry it on to its third constitutional reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 411, Controlled Substances Possession Penalties, reported from the Committee on the Judiciary.
The junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that Senate Bill 411 be engrossed and moved along to its third constitutional reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 440, Unlawful Hazing Amends Definition Penalty, reported from the Committee on the Judiciary with a substitute.
The gentlelady from northwestern Fairfax County, Senator Boysko.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the amendment in the nature of a substitute be agreed to.
The question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? Those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The substitute is agreed to. The gentlelady from northwestern Fairfax County.
Madam President, I move the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 447, Wage or Salary History Inquiries Prohibited Civil Penalty, reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor with amendments.
The gentlelady from northwestern Fairfax County, Senator Boysko.
Madam President, I move the amendment be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? Those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The amendments are agreed to. Senator Boysko.
Madam President, I move the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 523, Portsmouth, City of, amending charter, changes to process for recall of elective officers, reported from the Committee on Local Government with amendments.
Chair recognizes the gentlelady from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the committee amendments be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The committee amendments are agreed to. Gentlelady from Portsmouth.
Madam President, I move that the bill be engrossed and passed to its third constitutional reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 538, non-payment of wages, defensive contractor. Reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor with a substitute.
The gentleman from Lynchburg, Senator Peake.
Madam President, I move that the committee substitute be agreed to.
The question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The substitute is agreed to. The gentleman from Lynchburg.
Madam President, I now move that the committee substitute be engrossed and advanced to its third constitutional reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 565, natural gas, biogas, and other gas sources of energy agriculture and energy conservation. Reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources with a substitute, and from the Committee on Commerce and Labor with a substitute, and there are 2 floor amendments.
The gentleman from Eastern Fairfax County, Senator Sorovell.
Thank you, Madam President. With the recommendation that it be rejected, I would move the committee substitute from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources.
All right, first we're going to reject. So with the recommendation that the substitute from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources be rejected, the question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? All in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
The noes have it. The substitute is rejected. Senator Sorovell.
Thank you, Madam President. I would move the committee substitute by the Committee on Commerce and Labor.
The question is, shall the substitute from the Committee on Commerce and Labor be agreed to? Those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The substitute is now agreed to. Senator Sorovell.
Thank you, Madam President. I would move to waive reading of the floor amendment.
The question is, shall the reading of the floor amendments be waived? Those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The reading of the floor amendments are waived. The gentleman from Eastern Fairfax County.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd move the floor amendment. Speaking to that motion.
The gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Ladies and gentlemen, this bill has to do with biomethane and low emissions methane. There are 2 floor amendments that to clarifications that have been requested. The first one just clarifies the types of emissions that qualify for low emission natural gas. It was more of a, I think, typographical error. Well, it wasn't typographical error, but it was clarification, but I think it's technical in nature. The second amendment was requested by some of the LDCs, the gas companies, because the way the biogas bill is currently written, if a municipal sewage facility is flaring off methane, like the one about 5 blocks away from here, and they want to instead take the methane and put it in a pipe and sell it to somebody, that wouldn't count. So this just makes clear that municipal, if you're flaring off methane, you can put it in the pipe and it would count towards this bill, which everybody would want, I think, because they would rather have it being used and just burned into carbon dioxide and released into the atmosphere. So that's what the 2 amendments do. I'd hope we'd pass them. And then after that, I'm going to ask the bill go by for the day because there's another enactment clause we're debating right now.
The question is, shall the floor amendments be agreed to? Those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The floor amendments are agreed to, and Senator, the bill will go by for the day. Is that the bill will go by
my
for
motion.
the day?
I would ask the bill go by for the day.
Without objection.
Senate Bill 664, sex trafficking, minors engaged in prostitution, etc. Reported from the Committee on the Judiciary.
The gentleman from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the bill be engrossed and passed on to third reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? Those in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 732, Climate Resilience Localities Comprehensive Plan to consider strategies to address. Reported from the Committee on Local Government.
The gentleman from Accomack, Senator Lewis.
Madam President, could that bill go by for the day, please?
Without objection, Senate Bill 732 now goes by for the day.
Uncontested calendar, Senate bills on first reading.
Chair recognizes the senior senator from Fairfax County, Senator Saslaw.
Madam President, I move that all Senate bills on first reading on the uncontested and regular calendar, that's pages 18 through 39, that's Senate Bills 3 through 744, that the rules be suspended and the first constitutional reading of the titles be dispensed with.
We now have 40 bills in this section. The question is, shall the rules be suspended and the first reading of the titles of Senate bills on the uncontested and regular calendars, pages 18 through 39, Senate Bill 3 through 744, be dispensed with? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, no 0.
Ayes 38, no 0. The reading of the titles is dispensed with. The senior senator from Fairfax County, Senator Saslaw.
Madam President, I now move that those said bills go by for the day.
The question is, shall the Senate bills on the uncontested and regular calendars now on their second reading be passed by for the day? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bills will go by for the day.
Uncontested calendar, Senate Joint Resolutions on third reading. Senate Joint Resolution 83, confirming governor's appointments.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Alexandria, Senator Eben.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the resolution pass, and speaking to the resolution.
The senator has the floor.
This resolution confirms Governor Youngkin's agency heads, and I renew my motion that the bill pass, or the resolution pass.
The question is, shall Senate Joint Resolution 83 pass? Those in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote?
Joe.
The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, no 0.
Ayes 38, no 0. The resolution is agreed to.
Senate Joint Resolution 84, confirming appointments by the governor.
The gentleman from Alexandria, Senator Eben.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the resolution pass, and speaking to the resolution.
The gentleman has the floor.
This resolution confirms Governor Youngkin's cabinet officials, and I renew my motion that it pass.
The question is, shall the resolution pass? Those in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, no 0.
Ayes 38, no 0. The resolution is agreed to.
Senate Joint Resolution 85, confirming appointments by the governor.
Chair recognizes the gentleman again from Alexandria, Senator Eben.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the resolution pass, and speaking to that resolution.
The gentleman has the floor.
These are the, I believe, the last of the appointees from former Governor Northam to boards and commissions. And with that, I renew my motion that the resolution pass.
The question is, shall Senate Joint Resolution 85 be agreed to? Those in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, no 0.
Ayes 38, no 0. The resolution passes.
Supplemental calendar number 1. Uncontested calendar, Senate bills on first reading.
Chair recognizes the senior senator from Fairfax County, Senator Saslaw.
Madam President, I move that all Senate bills on first reading on the uncontested and regular calendar, that's pages 1 through 4, Senate Bill 87 through 657, that the rules be suspended, the first constitutional reading of the titles be dispensed with.
We have 10 bills on the supplemental calendar. The question is, shall the rules be suspended and the first reading of the titles of Senate bills on the uncontested and regular calendars, pages 1 through 4, Senate Bill 87 through 657, be dispensed with? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, no 0.
Ayes 38, no 0. The reading of the titles is dispensed with. The senior senator from Fairfax County, Senator Saslaw.
I would now move, Madam President, that those bills go by for the day.
The question is, shall the Senate bills on the uncontested and regular calendars now on second reading be passed by for the day? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bills will go by for the day. The senior senator from Fairfax County, Senator Saslaw.
Madam President, I inquire of the clerk, does that complete the calendar for today?
Yes, sir, and thank you for the long, warm welcome back.
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
Okay.
Is there any other business to come before the Senate? Hearing none, the clerk will report any announcements on the desk.
Today, Wednesday, February 9th, the Committee on General Laws and Technology will meet 1/2 hour after adjournment, Senate Room 3, Capitol. The Committee on the Judiciary will meet 1/2 hour after adjournment, Senate Room A, Pocahontas. The Finance and Appropriations Subcommittee on Transportation will meet at 4 p.m., Subcommittee Room 1, 5th floor, Pocahontas. Senators Barker, Saslaw, Hanger, Newman, Deeds, Marsden, and McClellan. Tomorrow, Thursday, February 10th, the Hampton Roads Caucus will not meet. This is a change. The Hampton Roads Caucus will not meet. The Committee on Education and Health will meet at 8 a.m., Senate Room A, Pocahontas. The Democratic Caucus will meet at 11 a.m., Senate Room 1 in the Capitol. The Republican Caucus will meet at 11:30 a.m., Senate Room 2 in the Capitol. And there are 6 shopping days left.
The chair now recognizes the President pro tempore, the senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the Senate do now adjourn until 12 noon on tomorrow.
The question is, shall the Senate adjourn until 12 o'clock noon tomorrow? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The Senate stands adjourned until 12 o'clock noon tomorrow.